Well, with just 3 weeks to go until we get the local elections, both Labour and the Conservatives have been out on the campaign trail, talking tough on retail crime. In a government U-turn, the Prime Minister today announced that assaulting a shop worker is to be made a separate criminal offence. That is, despite ministers previously insisting that creating a new offence wasn't needed to tackle the issue because it's already covered by existing laws. Well, instead we get a new offence. It's going to carry a maximum sentence of 6 months imprisonment or an unlimited fine. That is the same sentence for the existing offence of common assault. Under the plans, repeat offenders, including consistent shoplifters, could also be forced to wear an electronic tag. And all this follows a steep rise in violence and abuse targeting shop workers, with figures from the British Retail Consortium showing a 50% rise in reported incidents last year. Prime Minister said the new powers will demonstrate to shop workers that they have their back.
I have been concerned by the rise in retail crime, as I'm sure many others are, either seeing it or on social media, which is why today we've announced a strong set of measures to clamp down on retail crime. That's about a new offence, a brand new offence for assaulting shop workers, using facial recognition technology to catch perpetrators with CCTV, but also greater use of electronic tagging of prolific shoplifters. It's been warmly welcomed by retailers and police that I've spoken to today, and crucially will demonstrate to our shop workers that we've got their back, and also that we will do what it takes to keep our streets and our communities safe. That's what everybody wants. That's what we'll deliver.
Well, Labour were also out and about campaigning on retail today, unveiling plans to revive the British High Street. During a visit to Teesdale, the party's Shadow Chancellor, Home Secretary and Deputy Party Leader talked up a 5-point plan, which includes reforming business rates and, tougher laws on shoplifting. Well, a little earlier, I got a response to the plans from the Shadow Policing Minister, Alex Norris. Alex Norris, thanks ever so much for joining us. Let's kick off with this thorny question of what do you do about shoplifting? The government says it wants to create legislation for the specific crime of assaulting a shop worker. Would you go along with that?
Well, yes. I mean, Adam, if I'm honest, I've been trying to introduce legislation to that effect for 5.5 years, as recently as earlier this year, I think February, and the government have voted against it at every turn. So I was delighted that they have seen the light on this issue. The reality is, I'm afraid, in that 5.5 years, the incidences of violence and abuse against retail workers have trebled, as the government have increasingly lost a grip of our high streets. So this is a start, but frankly, there's much, much more that will need to be done.
Very few people are actually prosecuted for violence or abuse of shop workers at the moment. Why would this make any difference, do you think?
Well, in and of itself, it won't resolve the problem. It helps because it makes it more easy. Frankly, it's simpler for police to enforce against. It makes it simpler for prosecutors. Obviously, it makes it simpler in court systems. So we know that's got to be a good thing. We also know that the same thing is on the statute book in Scotland and has had that effect. So this isn't a jump into the unknown. So it alone won't solve it, but in and of itself, it will give us another tool, both to deter but also to prosecute those who do the wrong thing.
Don't we actually need a lot more police in order, because you look at the reasons why people don't get referred for prosecution. Very often it's shops say, well, they don't think the police will do anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've hit on a really important issue there. Shoplifting's up, say, 30% this year. We know that over a 10-year period is really significant indeed. Violence and abuse at epidemic levels. It's reasonable to ask why. And it's reasonable to ask why people have completely lost confidence in there being an adequate response or any action being taken. And that's because we've hollowed out neighbourhood policing in this country. We've got 10,000 fewer neighbourhood police than we did have. So as a result, our officers who are doing their best are just simply overstretched. So that's why we've got the commitment to add back 13,000 police and police community support officers in communities, deterring and detecting crime. But also, we mustn't forget the absolutely dreadful legacy of the decision to downgrade crime that is under £200, as if somehow that's victimless, as in somehow that doesn't matter. Well, it does to small businesses. It also gave succour to those who think they can go into shops and take what they want, and that often leads then to violence, leads to abuse. And again, that has to change, and we're committed to remove that too. These things have political causes. that have led to this staggering increase. And therefore, we need political solutions. The government of the day have shown themselves unwilling and unable to provide that, and we're ready to do so.
I want to ask you about a couple of other big social issues. The Cass review into gender identity in young people and children released today. Do you think that has drawn any kind of line under this issue? Because it has been so divisive.
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible. I'm afraid in my line of work, as in yours, as in many people who are watching, you have to be on social media. And if you're on social media, you know you're never far from a really, really divisive argument about issues relating to transgender and transgender people. I think today is a really significant moment. You know, I think colleagues have described it as a watershed. I'd share that. That, you know, this is an important review. It's clearly been done very well, and we should thank the review team for doing that, and has pointed us to some very, very difficult questions around young people and how we meet their needs, both with regards to gender dysphoria, but also more widely their mental and physical health needs. And we should now want to de-escalate that kind of argument and get to an evidence base that allows us to make sure we're making safe public policy decisions, allowing people to live their lives as they are, free from threats of abuse and whatnot. And this, I think, could be a real moment for that.
You could look at this review and say that by demanding long-term evidence and research, it's effectively kicking the can down the road and leaving the problem for many years in the future. I mean, do you understand the anger that some trans groups are expressing today when they say they don't feel supported?
Yeah, I mean, that the review has highlighted in its right areas, or in the areas they consider right, that there is a lack of evidence. I think that that's probably fair. So it is right for them to say that, therefore, you know, we should gather that evidence. Of course it is. We want evidence-based policy making in this and in every area. It has also pointed at other important things about how we treat children and how we meet their mental health needs. That's been very clear about things that we've got to get on with now. So, you know, I think that's found that balance. You know, I'd hope people wouldn't be upset by this. You know, this is a serious report based on evidence that's talking about how to meet the needs of children, often children who have the most profound mental health challenges or other challenges in their life. And we should want to act on that and to therefore meet these challenges. And I think this gives us a good roadmap forwards. And it's, you know, one we certainly would be keen to adopt. And I think the government are probably in a similar place.
There will be those who look at this report, they look at the trans issues, they remember, of course, the horrendous murder of Brianna Ghey. And I wonder, if you were in charge of policing in this country, just tell us how much weight would you put on protecting minority communities, and particularly we're talking about the trans community here?
Yeah, I mean, I that's one of the real sadnesses, I think, of I don't really want to call it a debate, but of all the sort of the anger and the discourse online. That at the root we have, you know, people who are really vulnerable, who have some of the worst educational outcomes, as you say, in violence and abuse. And we should centre that support and, you know, that desire to look after them. They're in all, you know, it's our community, every member of it, whoever they are, ought to get that support. So, you know, I think we need to see that. And that case, you know, of course, was so serious and involved someone losing their life. So, you know, I think we need to dial down that kind of tribal style rhetoric and instead work back from the fact that, you know, we're all people, we're all together, and we have a responsibility to each other. And I know that sounds like quite an old-fashioned approach, but it's certainly mine.
Alex Norris, thank you very much for joining us today.